cloud. There we go. Yeah, so thank you so much, Mackenzie, for volunteering to be the Sherpa on this guild. And Paula, I just saw your note there that thank you so much for being the Sherpa on the Food Alliance. And so, you know, today you can play, if you've got the time, a kind of cross-pollinating role. And what we'd love to do is invite this guild as it goes forward. Mackenzie, Adam, I mean, Paula, if there's anyone else that you would like to add to this guild that you think would add value through this week, we can have, we cap the sizes of guilds to 8 people to kind of get the focus of that. And we think of guilds as the intention here is to take some of the pillars that we discussed in the upgrade and to kind of focus them into like further preparation through this sprout, and then next week blossom, and then a week after next blossom, and then into the harvest. And so our intention here is to use the collective intelligence of the guild to synthesize, get feedback on like what is like capital ready, so that when we collectively go out in harvest stage, and this, Mackenzie, will get to your voice note that you left me. When we collectively go out, we have like a stack of different solutions that are saying like, here's the synthesis of this collective intelligence of people in the field saying these are the areas that we know are like, one, critical, and two, here are the solutions that we've highlighted. So that as we go out and all of us combine our networks, we're all shining a light on like good work that's happening. So as to reduce the friction of capital going towards those projects is the intention. So hopefully that sets the context. And Mackenzie, if you'd if you've got the Wi-Fi, I'd love to be able to see you here. Your video's off right now. But maybe one thing we did that we would love to invite now is we took a minute of silence at the beginning of our community impact game that just finished. We began it with a minute of silence for George Floyd, but also everything that George Floyd represents in our world right now, the endemic injustice that exists, and just the deep wound of this collective underbelly that's coming to the surface in the collective right now. So just if we could have a minute of silence, that would be great. Thank you so much. Thank you. There's we're definitely, we went on a real like emotional deep dive with the 20 people, the 20 community leaders we just brought together for community impact, and it was such an emotional resonance in response to this moment. And yeah, it feels so important to presence it as people literally out are feeling such pain right now, and such like community isolation, and you know, just you're wearing a pressure cooker that is kind of over, you know, steam is coming out everywhere because people have been frankly, like dealing with the patriarchy and the social injustice and the hypocrisy and the list goes on, deep racial inequality and the like brushing over the carpet of years of slavery and the criminal injustice that happens, and list goes on. So we're really feeling that right now, and we're really feeling into this is really the purpose of these guilds and the alliances, and in the overall sense, the purpose of the game is for us to be humbly audacious in our visions for how we can change this. So I'm going to leave it there, and Brian is going to be over the next. So Brian, we're really here to facilitate from this moment going forwards, and what happens is we'll be facilitating this conversation and like working with what comes in synthesizing. But what will happen is on Friday there's a collective sprout where we invite everybody, and there'll be a half an hour presentation there from you guys. I would assume in this case from you, Mackenzie, about the different projects, refining the projects that we're taking through into the next stage. And so the goal this week is for us to kind of distill and get like which direction are we sprouting in, what are the different projects, because we can have more than one, but we want to kind of synthesize what those are and who's got the energy to lead them forwards. And so Brian's going to be facilitating from our side and taking notes and just like trying to support that synthesis role and dot connecting role, and Mackenzie's going to be the Sherpa. So thank you, Mackenzie. And Mackenzie, just before we start, was I clear on answering your question? You had mentioned about crowdfunding, and I can talk about that piece if that would help.
It would help, yeah. And I understand the progression that you described in a general sense. The notion of seed and sprouting and blossoming and harvest. I think it's a beautiful metaphor. But in a pragmatic sense, if there is a funding component to this process, which I understand to be the investment and time of energy, and to that be the payoff effectively. What is that structure? What is that platform? What are the intellectual property, equity, participation, operations, responsibilities, just so that I know what to expect and plan for, and simultaneously the paperwork that's necessary with my existing partners and projects. I just need to know, what to say. So
great. Well, thank you for that. And let me try and share kind of where we're at, because this is everything about the game is actually unfolding as we're playing it. So the structures that we're listening and responding, like how can we best support this structure of essentially a community accelerator for the commons, and what that looks like as projects coming in. So for one, let me talk about the funding, and then let me talk about the remuneration of those contributing their time and like where we're thinking of this. So the goal at the harvest stage is that we have like synthesized presentations that we can stack together and say, like, in the unified planet, here's all of the after 8 weeks of collective intelligence, here's all the synthesis around like everything that's been brought forward as for societal change. We do the same for food, we do the same for community, we do the same for we're creating this unanimous charter right now that will be launched on the 20th of June, getting signatures to the 26th, which is a kind of next step for the UN charter that was signed 75 years ago. And so we're trying to pull these different threads together, and then we're going into a game on the game, and then we're going into a game on land stewardship, and then we're going on to a game on reimagining capitalism, and then we're doing humanizing trust. So, and then it's going to be racial justice. So we're kind of going through this process of like pillars for social change. And so each one of those, like our hypothesis here is that as we're gathering lots of solutions, stacking them makes it easier to fundraise for a kind of container of solutions than each of those community solutions being kind of lone wolf silos. And that's like our hypothesis. So at harvest stage, what we're going to be doing is reaching out to our network investors, and we're going to invite everybody else to do the same. But really, how you fundraise and into what structure you're raising money into is very much up to the project. So, for example, in the case of the Sound Technology Guild, there's a new company that's being spun out of that effort. Well, it's been planned for a while, called Sound Helix, and it's actually a new organizational structure. And what our agreements are, or will be with that, is that any money that gets raised through the Unified Planet game, 10% of that money raised goes back into the Commons Fund, which gives the ability to pay everybody that was involved in the seed, sprout, blossom, harvest stage, for them to be able to convert that, like, kind of that Commons equity pool into real dollars, into like money. And so that's how we're thinking, is like, it's basically once we have a successful harvest, that's where we reap the rewards back to those that were contributed in getting that. So we don't own the IP. This is in the Planetary Commons. You know, everything we're doing is in the Commons. So if companies need to be spun out, that's one thing. But what we're thinking is that for a lot of these community projects, they're actually going to end up being DAOs, which stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. And that a lot of community projects don't actually need to be a legal, like a corporate entity. That communities, if they have the tools to organize resources and be able to remunerate people's contribution, and to be able to measure and set goals for people's contribution, if communities could do that, they wouldn't necessarily need to be foundations or companies, even though they could be. And so that's kind of how we're thinking about supporting there. And the final thing to say is what we're thinking, the model we have right now for stars, and this is something we're testing and would love feedback, is that for every minute people are playing the game, they will earn 1 star and get gifted 1 star. And a gifted star is a star that you can only gift on. So it's like but once you've been gifted a star, then you can convert it. So there's a kind of 1-for-1 model. And then what that will do is it will like really create those that like are the biggest contributors to the Commons will get the most number of gifted stars, and that becomes a way to redefine wealth. And what we're thinking is those stars, 1 star will get converted to $1. And so, you know, if you play a game for 4 hours this week, that's, you know, what is it, 120, 240 stars, 240 stars earned, 240 stars gifted. And then, and so the total number of stars will be determined on like what gets gifted to you. And then that can then get converted for dollars when those projects get to harvest stage. So that's our current like thinking, and it might not be right, but it's like the initial experiment saying, would this work if everybody was able to get remunerated for playing the game? And what we're moving towards is that what we want to happen is that people will be able to exchange those stars before the game starts. So we can go and raise money for a particular topic and people know that they're being remunerated along the way. We're not at that point yet, we're just proving the model. And so what we've said to initial game players is that this, like you being able to get remunerated for your time depends on these projects getting funded, which depends on the teams that are leading those projects, and we're here to support along the way. So I really hope that's clear, Mackenzie. I know there's a lot of information there, and we're like trying to write this up at the speed of it revealing itself. So
I'm sure there's a lot of emergence there and a lot to deal with. Is Upgame participating in the monies that are raised during the harvest phase?
Do you mean, are we raising money for the Upgame?
No, is in the event that money is raised during the harvest phase, is Upgame participating in those investments in the operation and the enterprise and the project?
Yeah.
Is there some split or involvement between Upgame and the money that's raised and the people that are involved? And I understood the star system in concept. I can't say I understand how that trades off, but
yeah,
you clear that.
It's so the way we're treating ourselves here is just like everybody else. So we as facilitators will also be earning the 1 star a minute, 1 star gifted model. And so we're all going through that together. So so in answer to your question, like, as like we're kind of part of that crew that are at seed stage, sprout stage, etc. And so that's what's going to us as like, to be honest, I try not to get to the you and us as the game, because what we're trying to do is have everybody feel like founding players. That's why I'm not a co-founder of the game. We are not co-founders of this game. This game is birthed into the commons, and we want everybody to feel ownership of the unified planet. It's a really important point. And so that's why Unified Planet doesn't have it's right now it's in the commons, and it's going to be a cooperative that will be owned by the people that play the game. And so that's what we're moving towards. And so a separate question that you asked there is like, how will Unified Planet participate? We will be, when we are bringing projects to funding, we will have our own funding goals as part of that we will profile. So for example, that we want every game funded for the next 6 months, and that we can build a whole media platform out of this, and have this content distributed where it makes sense. Have, for example, a whole research team making sure that for every topic, we're bringing together the 20 people that could really shift the industry. So there's a whole bunch of things that we need to do right now, because Unified Planet hasn't raised a dime yet. And we haven't gone out to raise because we've been still structuring it. But those are things that need to happen. So hopefully that hopefully it answers your question there, and hopefully it's useful to everyone.
I'm curious, Mackenzie, does it answer your question? 1 and 2, how do you feel about it? If it does.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Does it answer your question? And follow up, if it does, how do you feel about that conceptually?
I think it's moving in the right direction, and it sounds to me like it's, part of the emergence of the game. It doesn't sound like it's the kind of thing that I can write down and hand to my partners and explain. Which I think, bottom line is what, the people that are running, enterprises and working with partners and trying to consider what to do with the potential of, team or capital or input or exposure that comes from this. And there's more there to consider, but in general, I have faith in the people that are involved. And I know that, what's going on here is, in a word, emergent. So, marvelous. Okay. I don't really feel, like there's enough here yet for all of us to go, yeah, that, but I feel like there's enough here to work with to get to that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mackenzie. And a big part of that is like trusting that we're on an experimental journey. And we can see that this model has got a lot of energy. Like, a lot of people are getting engaged. There's multiple people wanting to start new games. And so we've got some hypotheses that we have fairly good confidence that we're heading in the right direction. And what we want to acknowledge is that everybody that's like entrusting their time, we can't guarantee that time will get converted into dollars. But we're going to work pretty hard that it does. We're going to do our best to get there. And so we're all part of this consensual experiment in self-organizing collective intelligence. And so that's really what this is. And we're saying, like, we don't know yet. We haven't proven that we can fund projects at the harvest stage. But in 12 years of studying communities, I know that this adds value to communities. This is like, we're getting at some of the, this is serious community acupuncture going on around where we know the biggest missing pieces are for communities to become sovereign and become empowered and become financially enabled. And that's our experiment. Like, we're trying to move the needle on that. And we know that that's like an engine, it's really what I would describe as like a commonwealth engine. Because if we can help move resources through communities, we can transform how new types of organization get funded when they're creating value for first people and planet, as opposed to profit. So
the whole trick about doing something that's never been done before is there's no plan, there's no strategy, there's nobody to ask. And if you ask any surfer in the world, how often they break down, plan, and strategize that wave. You know, I mean, that's the good stuff happens just getting on the damn wave and riding it. And so, you know, so be it, man. Step up.
That is it. Well said.
Yes.
Well said. Yeah, and that's
Big waves.
that's we're surfing big waves. You know, we came here to surf Mavericks, and you know the like we've said all along. Like when we started the game on Sound, we had no idea it would be an 8-week journey. We hadn't even brought in seed, sprout, blossom, harvest. You'd think that that was pretty fundamental, but we hadn't even brought it in yet. We had tried it once before, and so you know, just in all transparency, a lot of what we're doing is responding real time to you guys as like inputs on like how to organize this, how to get to this, and we're doing our best, and we recognize we have blind spots and we have things that we're not seeing, but we're recognizing that this is valuable. These are worthwhile experiments right now. So, Paola, do you want any thoughts that you've got around this? Because I know you've been playing this role with different community solutions. So it's like I know we're a fractal of each other's kind of work here.
Yeah, I think I mean it's always when you like what it was a little bit like what McKinsey said, that if you start something new in the beginning, it just doesn't exist. But like when the right people get together, and if we are able to define a good strategy and a good action plan, then I'm thinking we can definitely create great value. My community experience is in Colombia, in the communities in Medellin. And yeah, that's how we started as well. It was an experiment. We didn't know if it was going to work. And now, and today we're working with the city together, with the municipality, and with all different kind of, I think what is important in those experiments, that it's to integrate all different kind of sectors and know-how as well. So it might be civic organizations, but there might be also other networks we want to, or other, let's say, institutions we want to integrate. So I don't, since it's the first time, I don't really know like who are going to be like the best actors, but I think that's also part of the game. so I'm happy to be part of it.
Right. Thank you so much, Paola. That's very much our feeling here. So thank you. Adam, anything you'd like to share on this? And Mackenzie, we can go over to you for how you'd like to structure this guild conversation.
I can only echo what's already been said. You know, it's uncharted territory. It's exciting. It's needed. I think as a bit more structure evolves and it gains momentum, as we were talking when I first hopped on, I think food is one of those things that everyone can relate to. So it's just a matter of time and riding that wave to see how it plays out. But it feels like it has integrity, and it feels good to be part of it, and just happy to see where we go from here.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, Lucien, to your point about, you know, how to manage it from here, you know, if you could give me a little framework and structure around, you know, sort of the notion of what being a Sherpa is in this sense, recognizing that it seems like there's some, you know, some of the team that's not here today, you know, maybe they'll review the recording, but, you know, perhaps I can follow up, you know, around some structure that you provide to set some expectations for the week.
Yeah, so sure. So the way we do this is we feel the energy that came through last week with the people that were there. And we kind of break into, think of it as horizontals and verticals. And so the horizontal, think of it as a train station. That is the role of the Alliance. So the Alliance is a place to kind of catch a lot of different projects that are systemic in nature, that serve the overall food system, like food ecosystem. And to think about things like what is missing right now, what community initiatives would have the biggest impact on the whole ecosystem. And that's what Paola is the Sherpa for that conversation. That kicks off in an hour. A guild is kind of like it's in the analogy of the train station, a guild is a train. So it's going in a particular direction. So the Food Technology Guild is specifically charged with bringing in the projects that that are solutions, whether they be companies, foundations, or like community solutions, bringing those solutions around food technology to a point where anyone that's already working on them, it's not like come up necessarily with a new project. Some of them sometimes are, but often these are things that already exist, like what you described here with GeoGrow, and like that's why we shine a light on like, you know, what Stephen's doing with ecoversities in 1,001 hectares. And so the guild is, we say minimum of 3, max of 8 people. And you can choose anyone else that you want to invite. So anyone that, like, if depending on the size of the energy, if you want to get this, invite this guild to be up to 8 people, and that includes, you could be specific, Mackenzie, with people that participated in the seed stage. If you would like to make specific requests of people to join, please feel free. So this is where we try to empower the energy that's there. And for us, it's all player led, you know, we can't provide the energy for all of the different things that are happening, because there's so many different projects underway, and we're here just to support and shine a light. So as for structure, you know, the first thing really today is we've got this an hour each day this week. Obviously, feel free to meet more if you like, or of course, like, meet less if it doesn't, if the energy, if the charm isn't there. But the goal here by the end of this week is to have a synthesis that can be presented on Friday in 30 minutes of like, this is what the Food Technology Guild is showcasing. And that could absolutely include GeoGrow. It could include the Brex 360, is it Brex?
Bext, yeah.
Bext 360, Bext. It could include that, but it could include, you know, anyone that wants to profile fundable solutions. That's the purpose of the guild.
In that sense, because Karn has such a really specific application for food waste, and because he's already involved, and we've got a lot of sort of synergy between, you know, between our work, you know, it would make sense to me for him to sort of move into that place. And then, you know, from a participation perspective, if he is open to participating, you know, in this week, you know, I'm certain that we can suss out a bit more of what I think we were after in Lucian in our last call. And
for sure.
And
are you connected with Karn? I'm happy to.
No, I haven't. We've messaged. We haven't had a conversation yet.
Okay, I'm happy to send him a message, and we normally use WhatsApp groups, but I know you don't use WhatsApp, but just happy to see if he's got the availability. But I think I agree with you. Exchanging the for a better good for Terramera would be a really wise thing. You know, I'm personally committed to, you know, I would like to see Terramera raise at least $1 billion for its efforts, and, you know, have a lifelong commitment to supporting Karn do that. He can move serious money. He's already raised, I think, $100 and something million. So part of what we're looking to do with the Unified Planet Solutions is identify the things that are like ready for a shit ton of capital to start moving. Because we want to be going to, as the scales, like, we want to be, you know, right now we're just at such a fraction of the amount of investment that's actually needed to do systemic change. And so we want to, you know, we want to start moving like institutional capital. So I'll follow up there. So Mackenzie, do you want to, I guess a question here that, Brian, you can take the lead from this, from our side, but a question for you, Mackenzie, is like, what projects, just synthesizing, you know, we've obviously got GeoGrow, we've got Bex 360, we've got Terramera that we can profile in the Food Technology Guild. What else might we like to profile? Like, is there, you know, a question for you, Adam, is there anything that that you highlighted under food stewardship is there anything there that you would like to kind of develop and incubate and accelerate as part of the Food Technology Guild?
Yeah, personally, I've always been interested in the extremely low tech solutions. So creating some kind of like a nutrient hub for communities, which would include, the purchasing of a single bucket loader Caterpillar. Maybe it's used, maybe it's brand new, a handful of barrels and totes, a couple pumps, and then you run through your whole gamut of Korean natural farming techniques, which are various different ferments of different cultures, to provide communities basically a nutrient reclamation station. And so as part of that food stewardship location, you find your land, you designated a trust, or even if it's just unused land near a food waste production, a school, a university, a whatever, you find where there's food waste available, you put it as close to that as possible, and then you brew these really simple, low cost fermentations. One, to kind of spark that idea in people's minds of like, oh wow, this is such simple stuff, I can go home and do this on my own. And I mean, I think the hope would be that you can create a kind of a chain of these nutrient hubs that eventually phase themselves out, because it's such a low cost technology that communities just start doing it on their own. But I think in order to do composting, there is always that you need some kind of either in-vessel composting system or some type of infrastructure to manage a whole community's compost. So that's what I've always been excited about, because it's not, multi-million-dollar investments. It's barrels, buckets, pumps, aerators, and a small staff of people that are just picking up and transmuting food waste into exportable nutrients for communities.
What we found in the sound sprout stage was, in the seed stage, there was a lot of different ideas kind of floating around, and what came through in the sprout stage was like this synthesis, and then finding the way all these different concepts and ideas could be packaged kind of together for a larger funding block. So that's my encouragement here with the food guilds, is like, how can we take those smaller pieces, like we're talking about, cheaper, easier things, to the big ideas that are more technical and need bigger dollars, and show like larger, broader community solutions with these multiple facets of things happening. So you don't want to dilute too much and make it too complicated. You got to find the sweet spot of bringing it all together, because when we can provide, again, that larger framework of like, we can go into a particular community, let's say, and have this piece, this piece, this piece, and this piece, and these are the funding, like, this is what we would need for each, and this is the full block of what we are expecting to get. That gets us further down the line, and that's what I've been able to see play out with the sound guilds. We're now moving into Blossom, so it's really like now going to congeal all of that, and then we'll get to Harvest, which is going to the funders. So in that regard, that's what I experienced in seed. I'm a sound alchemist myself, so that's like my field. So I was able to really kind of capture and see all of that a lot clearer. But that's my encouragement here with these food guilds, is like the different pieces that you're talking about, Adam, Mackenzie, like, and the other people that we have in the community that we can draw back in. Like, we get to X, Y, and Z, and we know Steven has a piece, then we can reach out to Steven and say, hey, this is where we're at with this. Would you come in with your piece? And like really build the family, essentially, that then gets us a white paper that's like, here's what we're going to do. This is how it's funded. And more complicated questions come down the road of who has what. And that's something we're trying to overcome within this community, and being open sourced and not owning anything. Like, there's going to be some hurdles there, we know. But ideally, this is how we'll capture all of this and keep driving it forward. So that's where I would want to be of service with supporting you guys, is helping. I'm a few steps ahead of how the game plays out with the sound piece. So like continuing that work, and then coming back like all week this week, and supporting you guys. Like, where are we at what can we do? Who do we need to call? Like, and with Lucy's network as well, I continue to build on. We saw all the faces, you know, in our first round in seed, and this is exactly what I saw in sound. Then you drop off and you get a smaller block, and we're all here, and we start to kind of refine it, and then we reach back out to the people that were there for seed, and they get pulled back in with their pieces. Like, it's all kind of a big web that we're just piecing together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think y'all, we all have larger and larger networks that we haven't even begun to tap into. Frankly, because of that clarity, you know, when things get clearer and there's, you know, clearer places for people to attach and do what they do. You know, Adam, you brought up a simple solution. One that really came to mind there, and you know, I haven't talked to him in a bit, but Sistema Biobolsa. Are you familiar with them?
No.
Yeah, totally check that out. Amazing for food waste. It's basically a giant black rubber bag that you put food and organic waste into, and compost tea comes out the other end. And they do gasification with it, but that's cool. And there's also, you know, a couple other food and ag techs that we could bring into what I understand is sort of a systemic conversation that's you know, coming together here, where you're not trying to present an individual technology for funding. You're trying to present a systemic fix, and you know, and the scale of funding that comes with systemic fixes.
Yes,
Precisely. Precisely. From the system, from this moment of recognition that we need to create a planetary operating system. We need to like stack together all the areas of like radical system change. And in doing so, each one of those nodes are their own entity. It's like it could be a company, it could be many different things. But if we could stack them together, we can get to this thing that many of us so believe we need, which is like common unity. Here, it's like we need to be on the same team, and we need a clear place where that team is, and we need to send out a message of hope. And so, Adam, what I would definitely like encourage is that what you're describing there with those nutrition hubs could be a project. Like if that's something you, for example, like want to take the lead on, saying, you know, even to, let's say, to the maker movement, hey, here is a nutrition hub that's like a very cheap, like compostable solution that could be put into parks or like common areas, something like that. You could think about the distribution strategy of them. And we could go to funders, for example, and say like, okay, we could create a smart contract with communities where any community that funds us, a smart contract is like a blockchain ledger that goes and says, let's say one of these costs an investment of like $100 to create, just for argument's sake. We create the ability for funders to go and create a smart contract with communities saying, we will pay the $100 to like to enable this. And like the return on that could be like however the community defines itself. So the community could get these things financed up front, and then that could be rolled out, and like those investors paid back over a period of time, and these communities are paying these. So that's the kind of thing we're getting at. These could be like solutions that could be 3D printed. They could be like they could be just put together with basic things that you get from, you know, any like construction store or garden, or, you know, Home Depot. But like they can vary from like, this is $50 to do, and it's a local solution in a local community, all the way up to, here's what I would do with $1 billion.
So in McKinsey, circling back, like as a Sherpa, it's like let's identify some big solution, like broad solutions, and then multiple programs below that broader solution as to here's what we want to apply to fix a systemic issue. And like a bullet list like that then we can take those pieces and go, Adam's got this, and he's got a network that can find pieces over here, and like we dial it in on like that, and then we go outreach to find those other pieces, pull them in, and then work them come into a common agreement with something that we can then get to blossom a presentable like white paper package, and then to harvest with, okay, these are the names, this is the solutions, this is how we're attacking it, and then taking it to the funders.
Got it. Okay. Well, you know, really, we've been having that conversation. The geospatial piece with Versus and Planet.com, Bex 360 doing what they do very well, which is value chain transparency, online, offline, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, multimodal data, to allow for a blockchain integrated value chain to track whatever it is, and whether that's a specialty crop for food or, or for fiber or a million other things. But so from a systemic approach, I mean, we do have a platform that answers, the decentralized trust, immutable record, crypto monetization sort of advance on this conversation, which really, as a start to any of these conversations, it's what gets us funded, period. Mm-hmm. The traditional model of finance for this stuff does not work. So, I think pretty universally in this conversation, everybody here has kind of come to the same, like, well, if we're going to get funded the way the big boys do, we have to build the system they have. And, they're using debt leveraged, secured demand financing for, purchase agreement financing, factoring, to deliver on the infrastructure, to fulfill what's already sold effectively, right? And so I feel like what we've built with Bex 360 is what bridges the gap to answering that question for secured demand and the ability to finance it. And I feel like geospatial with Versus and Planet.com provides us a universal ability to put on a virtual reality headset and walk into systemic problems. If we're going to look at ecology, economy, and community, let's look at it. Let's not pass around 2-pagers and presentations and expect a very broad range of multidisciplinary people with their own self-interest to speak the same dialects or to understand or prioritize things that are infinitely important to other people that they don't even begin to understand and never will. And I think extended reality and the technologies that we've talked about up to this point and the potential partners that we have can provide us some really universal tools that effectively will, take a lot of the static out of the conversation and make the funding side of this real-time realization of the fulfillment of a vision, the kind of thing that you get with it, for example, a donor advised fund, which is exactly the financial instrument that we're looking at to help move the money around this. And if we can put our heads together around the technologies and the people that are gathered around the project already, there's nothing missing, for a genuinely systemic answer to a new economy that delivers on, things like agriculture, biological, and clean tech, as a systemic answer to food system problems.
Brilliant.
Mackenzie, I'm so excited you're on this team. You're like speaking exactly at the crux of this, which, as the donor advised funds, potentially a CPFI, a community development financial institution, there's serious funding tools that collectively we can move more money. And so what you're getting at here with, blockchain funding models, smart contracts, contract financing, like the infrastructure distribution and transparency. All of these are like pillars that aren't just relevant to food. They're like systemic pillars. And so the more we can tell this story, the better. So as you're thinking about, you're holding those down. And so Mackenzie, your role here is to distill those projects. So geospatial, for example, do you want to invite in Dan Mapes and Will Marshall, and anything we can do to support that? To invite in, have a conversation, for example, on what would this piece look like? Adam, your piece like that as a project, how would we best want to communicate that? And our recommendation is don't pick more than three projects to highlight in the run up to Sprout. If you think about a seed sprouting, it's going in it's kind of sprouting in one or two directions, right? Mm-hmm. And so we really want to not take on too much and be really realistic, because right now, success is the measure. We want to go down and have milestones that we can achievably hit, and so we can best support the next milestone, which can be another game starting with a particular focus area.
Which does not limit that broader framework that we talked about. It's here's the big piece, here's the systemic change. These are the fractals of all of that. we've picked 1, 2, and 3, and these can be your specific projects and others to go, here's where we're starting. You know, so for me, I'm always just like going in the funder's mind of like, okay, this is legitimate and real. I can start here, put down X, knowing that I've got a promise of Y and Z if you guys hit these certain goals. I mean, you guys kind of know how this stuff works as well.
Well, the thing about this, man, is if I was pulling it out of my ear, you know, just as an idea, it would, you know, it would be one thing. But what I'm describing, you guys invited the team to do. I mean, Greg Wendt was who was working on this, James Hanusa and Dan and the rest of them. You know, this is all existing technology, existing platforms being cobbled together. This is not conceptual software or hardware, you know.
Exactly.
So it shouldn't be too crazy. I hear what you were saying there, and I, you know, from a balanced, you know, sort of risk and reward perspective here, you know, what I'm describing when you take Neil Sahota, Greg Wendt, James Hanusa, you know, versus and Planet.com, you know, Bex 360 and GeoGrow, you know, Adam and Karn bring pieces that we don't have. You know, Pala brings a community and an ecological perspective to this that you know, we don't have. I think we've all got a few friends that we could bring into this conversation in the next 4 or 5 days to, you know, put some structure around this. But if this is too far out or too much, you know, I'm all about reeling it into, you know, some believable piece. But, you know, if somebody's willing to sit down and do the reading, you know, this all seems to be very real tools sitting in front of us, waiting for us to build something.
Okay, cool. Brian has a thought here.
Yeah, so it's just, you know, listening to all of us, I mean, the three of you all hold kind of different sort of aspects of things that you might be wanting to work on within this field. And so what we can do is, like, as we understand the next few days, we want to get to a place where on Friday we can actually present these ideas in a more formal way. And so as we try to understand our time together and what's going to be happening behind the scenes from these calls, it's like, what is the ask? This is like, that's the goal of this week, is to like formalize projects that we want to go out to these people that we all know and say, this is what we, you know, through our collective sense making, we've identified these as like strategic opportunities, that there's challenges that exist and there's technologies that exist, or there's new ways of working with ancient practices that we know about that we can sort of implement. And that's how we can start to think about all three of you. I mean, you three are so gifted and so talented, and you're in different places of the world working on different things. And so it seems like our job here, and like, please view me as like an ally as well, in terms of someone that you can be bouncing these ideas off of. And I'm happy to jam with you as well to like write up proposals. But we want to be moving into the Friday presentation to create an ask, a formal ask. And we'll do this video call, and we can, you know, you'll all essentially be presenting, and we will be able to like use that material as well as additional supplemental written up material to then take these projects in a formal way to these people and be like, hey, we want to work on this. Like, do you want to jump on this train?
Yeah, and Mackenzie, you know, I think what you're talking about with the visualization and geospatial stuff, it feels like, as far as an ask, a big money ask, a single sprout ask, that creating that technological platform feels like the kind of the icebreaker that allows all these other things to become possible. Because what I was mentioning is basically, if you can plop on a visualization studio, and maybe you just have a hub where people can come and they can put on those types of things and assess their land or assess their community, then everything that I mentioned, the different fertilizers and biological things, is just a simple like drop down menu in that. Hey, I'm missing these nutrients, click nutrient tab. You get all your conventional, you know, options with those conventional costs. Maybe you do that if you're not to the mental space of doing this other stuff. If it goes to low cost, more sustainable, then that pops up. So I don't see my stuff as like a separate thread. It's just part of that embedded information system that you're talking about, getting those individuals together to create.
Well, and if you look at the market through a consumer's eyes, through an investor's eyes, through a philanthropist's eyes, through a politician's eyes, through a banker or an insurance or the farmer themselves. They have completely and totally different perspectives, totally and completely different dialects and contexts on the conversation. And getting those people to the table together to talk about something as complicated as communities and ecology and finance, God's sakes, getting multiple classes of people together to sit down and talk about what the money, where the money's going to come from and where it's going to go and what it's going to do. Just that simple conversation. The ability to walk into those models and have it all flow through and work together, the ability to add components of 3D design to that model that have their impact metrics considered before they get added in. So everything about the way the model flows, you know, provides you the ability to do AI modeling, provides you the ability to do student projects, provides you the ability to do design, provides people to test their hypotheses, you know, at this scale and have real-time data to work with. It's so completely and totally different in a consideration set that, you know, it's the game changer everybody keeps talking about. And so as wacky as it sounds to be like, we're going to put satellite data and International Space Station data into a conversation about, you know, geotherapy, and somehow that translates to a local farm.
Makes perfect sense to me.
It really does. And so, you know, in this way, I think we should absolutely pull our friends together that are all working on their components of this conversation in a lot of different ways, and bridging institutional capital and private wealth and bridging, you know, public capital into projects like this. This is how we do it. It's transparency, it's visibility, it's you know, risk mitigation and real-time reporting. What else could they ask for? You know, and so, you know, that's kind of the track I'm on. Please, if I'm missing something, tell me.
No,
Mackenzie,
you're fully in it.
Yeah. Bang on. Something like you know, we don't, as a collective, as a you know, community of communities, like self-organizing around collective intelligence, we are not here to tweak the existing system. You know, we're here to be audacious, to do the big swings, you know. And so we love the sound of like geospatial technology and bringing in the International Space Station and connecting Versus and Planet, and like we're actually in a really beautiful, incredibly privileged position where all of those are like already within our network. And so think of this as like creating almost a credibility cauldron, you know, like a trust. But like we're all as every week we're bringing more and more people into the game. We're all adding our credibility to what is the unified planet and what does it mean to all of us. And so it's that where we think these audacious solutions that are systemic in nature can really thrive. And I want to welcome Nikki here. And Nikki and I have been part of countless conversations at the World Economic Forum that are like the frustrating kinds of conversations, which are like, you know, we recognize that we need to do wholesale systems change, but so often our default is tweaking what we currently have. Let's make it a little bit better, as opposed to saying, we don't have a sacred cow here. We don't have to do things because that's what we've inherited. We can completely rethink structure. And that's really what the Unified Planet's about. It's like, be humbly audacious. And so we encourage those at the same time as pragmatic. Like, let's boil that down into sizable bite, what's the next project? What's the next milestone? What can we fund so that we're on this journey of using the game as an accelerator to bring this vision into the commons? So I'm going to switch over gears now, and please feel free, Adam, Mackenzie, to stay. We'll ping others and see who else was going to be joining.
I would actually go ahead and encourage you to stay if you're welcome. And again, I want to speak from my sound experience of seeing the guilds flow into the alliance, into the guild. It's more of like in the guild, it's more of the ideas and the structure of it and how the framework, and then the alliance conversation is typically more of the broader, like, how do we put all these pieces together? The more voices that I saw that stayed through were rewarded a lot more in putting everything together in the mind and in the heart, and then onto paper. So please, I would encourage you to spend as much time as you can, even if it's
Yeah,
just
I just checked my calendar, so yeah, good.
Yep, I'll be here.
Awesome.
So-
Thank you. Thank you. Well, so yeah, thank you so much. And we've definitely, just echoing what Joshua said, we've seen this be, some of the magic is in the cross-pollination between these two, with the others. So, Paula, thank you so much for volunteering to Sherpa here. And you heard earlier what it is to Sherpa in the Food Technology Guild. In the Alliance, if you think of the Alliance as a place where we can, really it's about showcasing the amazing things that are going on. And also showcasing where the gaps are that need to be funded and who those that could fulfill those gaps are. And so this is where we thought the social gastronomy movement is incredible, like itself, Sherpa Alliance. And so we'd encourage the Alliance to be a kind of, if you like, a container where in time, the Alliance actually could be the recipient of funding. And so through the Alliance, there could be some collective intelligence applied saying, here, out of the 10, 20, 50, 100 projects that have come through, here's how we would prioritize them in terms of collective intelligence applied to distribution of capital. And through the Alliance, we can go and say, okay, like these projects get funded, et cetera, et cetera. That's like that's the direction we're hoping this will go. All of the leadership is coming from yourselves as those that are founding members of this Unified Planet Food Alliance. And then all your organizations, for example, so the Social Gastronomy Movement, Gastromotiva, Bex 360, GeoGrow, Planet, Terramera, et cetera, they can be founding members of that alliance. And so, and you can be empowered to invite more people to join that alliance as we go through the stage. Up to 8 people can join at this stage. So that's hopefully some context setting for this. And Paula, I'd love to pass over to you just to introduce your thoughts on focus for the alliance and how we could best support this conversation today.
Yeah, I was wondering. I mean, I listened in the beginning in our previous session, in the tech session where Nikki was not in. The guild is clear to me in a way. So to define like approx 3 projects together, which have the impact and for which we're going to do fundraising. But the Sherpa, I don't really like. I would be great if you could like define again, like what would you like to see from a Sherpa? Like what is the main goal? It's like guiding through the conversations, or like what do you?
I mean, that's really why we call it Sherpa, is a gentle guide. And this is something, a real new framework that we're working with in making our best heartfelt efforts to be open sourced, circle community, where there's not one person that's just kind of driving everything like you would see in a typical meeting. We want to structure this where there's someone that's holding a broader framework and helping to direct the conversation and helping to be outreach to others, right? So taking the hour of download and everything that came through, and McKinsey's like, if we reach out to this person, this person, and this person on these particular things, the Sherpa can take the lead on that and say, okay, like I've got this, or you've got this, or what are these pieces? And then when we come back tomorrow, these were what our goals were, these were our tasks. Did we get there? That's what we're asking from a Sherpa, and that's what we're doing here with multiple games going on. Brian and Lucien and myself. So it's really that broad. Do you follow?
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, like we have this. I'm just trying to understand. So we had the document with the different topics, right? We had like food nutrition and all those different other pillars or components we defined. So now it would be like coordinating to like, I'm just like, because I'm with Nikki, I'm in one group, right?
Yeah.
And now it's more about like keeping the momentum in a way, and that everyone kind of like hands in their ideas and projects.
Well, what we do is we really let the energy flow. So we think of energy, we think of money like water, and these ideas, these like water. And so we're just inviting the water to flow here. And so people's ability to like take projects forward depends on them representing those projects. We can't do it for, you know, for anyone. And so
Right.
we're here as like a platform to support this. And so we thought for the Alliance, you know, just to kind of recap on where we are, you know, the upload number one was food justice. This was really there from Cara, and this whole notion was like food circles. So looking at how we could partner as a model with like regenerative farms to create like distribution, like new distribution designs for people participating in this like one-for-one food circle. And so part of that, we talked about a Unified Planet Food Oath, because this is an area that you raised, Nikki, of like making sure there's like fair wages, for example, like labor conditions, access to education, training opportunities, those kind of things. One of the projects of the Food Alliance could be what is a food oath that we would invite organizations, whether they be companies, foundations, or like nations, like national policy, like regions, bioregions, etc., working with like California, for example. Is there an oath that we could come up with in the Alliance that would be useful? That's like one idea. That's food justice. Food culture is obviously part of this one. So all of the different projects that are already underway with the social gastronomy movement, we would love to profile the synthesis of that and have this Food Alliance be a channel for social gastronomy movement to raise and distribute funding, is how we're thinking about it. So that, like, that as a synthesis of like, hey, we have this hubs, like how we can present that. That's under food culture. Food genome was definitely under here, and so this is really Stephen Brooks's project. It's looking at like mapping nature's intelligence. It's looking at ecoversities and the role like permaculture education, seed banks, soil banks, knowledge banks around like you know, adaptive farming, agricultural intelligence, land stewardship. These kind of things could be ecoversities could be profiled essentially with the with this. Then just moving on, food reverence. So this is an area, for example, like the Food Alliance could introduce like a project that we wouldn't necessarily need to put now, but we could put as a project of the Alliance, would be like mindful meals, where we create a card deck and distribute them around the world of like connecting people with the story of their food, connecting people ritually to their food. And so this is a really good example of a project that could be raised in the Commons that doesn't actually need a lot of money. It would, the budget for that might be like $10,000 to come up with a really beautifully designed card deck, and we could distribute it through all the organizations that were already participating in this. So that's one. Food waste, food technology, and potentially even food stewardship, we put into the Food Technology Guild. But if there's anything there that's more like ecosystemic, that can absolutely come into the Alliance. And then Greg is going to come in on food economy, and he's been holding a bunch of different pieces together. A lot of conversations with Greg last week around like connecting the dots around, you know, state, region, community solutions, working with California, the Capital Task Force, and that would be another piece that we can highlight as part of this Alliance. So does that make sense? Like, that's how we're thinking about it, and it's really where the energy flows. You know, we're just seeing all these amazing projects, and we want to basically like find a way to shine a light on them and accelerate their rollout.
Mm-hmm. So I would want to add to that as a Sherpa with the Alliance. It's taking all these broader pieces, these 8 uploads, seeing what's coming from the guilds. So in our, you know, in games that are ahead of you guys, like with sound, like those all kind of mesh up, and the Alliance can take pieces from each guild and see where it's all kind of coming together and help to create the broader framework that we talked about actually in the previous guild call on like what it will look like to have like systematic change in a big, a chunk of funding is essentially what we're looking for. We want to go to big funders and show them multiple different solutions that we have for broader issues. So the Alliance is going to like go back to those 8 initial uploads, find the pieces that are working and who's working together, and then kind of bring them all into one. And in our first round with sound, that's gone really, really well. We had multiple different ideas, some things that were already existing and moving forward, some things were new, and we've been able to like parse that down into one package. So as a Sherpa, you're kind of just helping to find that and put the right voices together and make people, or not, have people come into different calls. You might know that X and Y are happening in the first guild, and then on the second, like bring them in and say, hey, here's what's happening over here, because it all kind of lines up. So it's helping just kind of that flow.
I don't think there was an alliance last time I was connected, at least. So I think this is a new space, right? When I think of social gastronomy movement, Lucian, which is what we put for culture, sort of a frame. Social gastronomy movement is actually much more alliance, because we work along the food cycle, right? And we just connect, like our big framework is CCP, connection, collaborations, and partnerships. And what we do is just create these connections so that can flow. We're creating our first collective funding actually now during COVID, like where we're collectively funding towards different initiatives, especially those that are using CCP, so connecting, collaborating, and partnering. So on a collective impact model basis. So I wonder, and I wasn't aware that there was this new alliance piece as well. I wonder whether social gastronomy wouldn't be even more suited in alliance, actually, whether the example for culture. Just a question here. And I was just a little confused at the beginning. I'm like, oh, there's an alliance.
Yeah. That is exactly right. Like that was my intention in asking you, Paula, to be the Sherpa here. Is like, I know the social gastronomy movement, and I know that you're already like, I know the spectrum, I know the model, etc. And so what we would like to do is see like social gastronomy movement as that like hub distribution, like as a way of having intelligence on, as an alliance, when we're going out to like support this stacked model of like raising funding, this alliance is being like stewarded, like co-led, but led by the social gastronomy movement, which is already set up as this model. Mm-hmm. And so what we're saying, what like the way social gastronomy movement is being supported by the Unified Planet is as a way of like us showcasing the great work that you're doing. Kind of it's answering that question that we had in Davos together at the lunch with the World Food Program, which is like, hey, if we have like a distribution model of like location-based community solutions around food systems change, how do we start to distribute money through those networks? So instead of money going to like companies and foundations, we're actually like financially empowering movements like the social gastronomy movement as an intelligent distribution partner of capital. Because across, if I know, Nikki, if we were to go and say, like, of all the people I've met in like 12 years of speaking about community and food as a vehicle for social change in communities, of all of the people I've met in my life, like what you and David and the whole team are doing at the social gastronomy movement is who I personally would most trust. If I had like $1 billion to give away to food systems, I would go and say, hey, Nikki, David, here's, could you come up with this structure? That's the point. Like what we're trying to do is bring together people that can move serious amounts of capital into community solutions. Mm-hmm. And so that's what the whole alliance is for, is like supporting that which you're already doing, like that. Like we want to showcase social gastronomy movement, not in any way compete with it. It's like
no, I didn't see it this way. I thought that's why we're working for
exactly
next generation.
Thank you, Mackenzie.
No, I think it even links more to our work, and we're right in the middle, and this is exactly the case that we've been making. Give us that amount, and you will reach not only one community, but 10 communities around the globe that will accelerate the process by connecting to others, working collectively. And so it's just a thought, right? Whether social gastronomy should not just be, and we can move, because Paola and I are co-sherping the culture piece, which is what Paola's project is working on, as well, specifically in Colombia as well. So I was just wondering whether it should get social gastronomy be on both of these things, or should it just be alliances, or like, how do you see that?
Well, I see you, Nikki, you absolutely being, we don't have any limit to the number of Sherpas, so you could totally co-Sherpa the alliance here. And in terms of like what gets presented at Sprout Stage, what we could do is present here as the alliance, we could present the social gastronomy strategy. Because the way I look at this is, surprise, surprise, like I've been there with you for the number of years. Unified Planet is a fractal of social gastronomy movement. Like what we're trying to do around system change, you're trying to do around food systems change. And so that's where we see social gastronomy. That's why I was like, it's essential for you to be part of this conversation. Because that's where like you're in the field and you have the ability to distribute like significant capital already, and so that's where we want to like shine a light on that as a strategy. And so you can present, as we go to Friday, the social gastronomy movement totally would be it would be great to present that as a like a synthesis of like, this is our our strategy around connect, collaborate, and partner. This is our theory of change. These are who our network partners are. And so as we go to Blossom, we can then start to go and say, okay, here's like actual like funding, here's some community projects that are ready to receive capital. And so then once we go to Harvest Stage, all of us can pool our networks that we know invest in food for social change. And by that time, we've got a whole bunch of projects that people can go and say, yeah, that's like, I see that. And we're doing like massive amounts of collective intelligence along the way to get there. So cool.
Definitely cannot co-share the two projects, but it was just trying. I'm making too many commitments around different things, but it was just trying to understand, and where I see the better fit for social gastronomy as such would be in there. But there's always, since it sort of goes across, so I'd love to hear Paola, and Paola's part of the team as well. So it's just like represented social gastronomy both ways. But yeah, just wanted to I was trying to understand, because I hadn't heard of the alliance piece, which is so aligned with what, like, we just closed the first pitch for the collective fund that we sent over the weekend. So it was very aligned with what you were saying, money distribution, making the pitch for bigger. It's about, yeah, anyway.
Well, what we want to do is like showcase that fund and that fund's goals as a way of like, hey, if you want to have, biggest bang for your buck in food systems change, here's what we found is like trusted, this is what we know, and like that's why these networks is like so much trust involved. But to be clear, you're not being asked to Sherpa two groups. Food culture is part of the alliance. That's how we do it. We synthesize down.
Got it.
So the first week of seeds.
Got it.
We go and look at those pillars and we go and say, where do they live? Where are the energy? And so we've actually bucketed a lot of those pillars into the alliance. And so then we just keep following the energy that flows. And like each alliance has got its own like, engine, because people start seeing that being a founding member of an alliance here is like a great way of, creating 1 + 1 = 11, like really joining our efforts and seeing that together we're stronger. So maybe Nikki or Paola, would you be able to dive in a level deeper for everyone around like that funding model? Because that sounds incredibly relevant here as something to showcase, like funding these like food system interventions through community, like a community fund.
Yeah, but Mark, I can share specifically. That's what I've been working on. So we are opening, like we are on hold with a 501c3 that you helped with in the US. However, we're going forward with a Swiss foundation, and so the Swiss, like the laws around distribution are more open. Let's say it's Switzerland, so that should be actually coming through now in July. We're locking it down. Like the account is like we're opening it now already, but in terms of tax benefits and everything, so that's moving forward. And one of the pieces that we've submitted is as well the distribution power, so that within our alliance, so whoever's part of network, and that is very, listening to Steven's fund in Steven's work in Costa Rica, that is social gastronomy work in our definition. And so he could be mapped, because we're now launching the map in 2 weeks as well, where you can see all of these initiatives. These are just social gastronomy organizations around the world, where they are located. And we're using, and I know Paula mentioned that last week you guys spoke about Kumu as well. We're using Kumu as the map, so you can not only see map, but you can also see the centers of connection, so the collaborations, and seeing the gaps where there's no collaboration happening. But anyhow, the map is sort of like the entry level to being part of a network. Like just sign up and put yourself on the map and start mapping connections. And with that sort of like makes it the network. And we want to bring, like that was always, like you said, our intention to be able to distribute to whoever is part of this network. And it goes really from production up until whatever's being served, up until food upcycling. So the projects are very diverse. And it's just so we learn from each other, right? So the distribution, like the first fund now, which is the Food Solidarity Fund, that is being launched now during the COVID times, in order to help distribute food to those that need it most, because the hunger rates are going up. The World Food Programme put out big warnings. And so right now the focus of the fund is food distribution, bringing food to those that most need it. But this is just the first pilot, so that then we can launch a big fund to the network on whatever initiatives there are. And the distribution could come from Switzerland, either to projects directly or to the hubs, like you said. So hubs is a collaborative between either different people or organizations that really look at the issues that we're facing, front we're doing here. So this is just like when I talked to Caterpillar last year, they said, it's so amazing how many local initiatives are happening. We just think about millions. So distributing 100,000 here, 100,000 there, it doesn't work for us. So we give to the big organizations. So that's when the whole collective funding came up, where we can sort of just channel the money through Switzerland and then distribute the trusted network. So with less sort of like not due diligence, it's more of a trust-based, where this is a trusted network and people know where the investments need to go. So that's a little bit how we're looking at it. So, like when you think about grant making in general, it's like line by line, 10,000 needs to go into teachers, 20,000 needs to go into food, etc. And so it'll be more of like the outcome driven rather than how the money will be used in the process. That's how we look at it from a collective funding perspective. And we have Ashoka on board that is going to help with the criteria building, the mentorship programs and everything, making those connections again, because we do think that we can accelerate whatever impact is being created by also connecting those mentors in.
Nikki, this
so that's really on the fund piece.
Yeah, this is so on point to present at Sprout as the Food Solidarity Fund.
Awesome.
As like, we don't, these projects don't need to be like projects of Unified Planet. Unified Planet is like a co-op, and in the same way as you are, you're becoming a Swiss foundation. What we envision for the Unified Planet, it will be Swiss Genossenschaft, a co-op that's owned by everybody that plays the game. And so it creates essentially an incentive for everybody to feel a deep sense of belonging, of what does it mean to be a member of the Unified Planet. And so that's where things like the Food Solidarity Fund, people can like make themselves aware of like all of these different amazing social change initiatives because they belong to something, they've taken an oath, they've like gone deep, they've been part of a ritual to come into what does it mean to be a player in the unified planet. And that's where we think we can best support like the amazing work, because you know, for us it's like the Food Solidarity Fund is like everything I believe about most empowered social change. So that's like where we want to shine a light on that. And so as we go through this week as the Food Alliance, it's like, okay, like other projects like the social gastronomy movement, and in particular the Food Solidarity Fund, is a great thing for us to present as a like on Friday as like, hey, here's an area that like we can take forward into Blossom, and we can ask like, how could we accelerate this, like support the scaling of this in the market. What else is there? Like, what else should we make sure we profile? And bear in mind, as we said on the Food Technology Guild, we probably don't really want to present more than 3 at this stage. 3 areas like Food Solidarity Fund and Social Gastronomy Movement, and like what else are the other things that we can really showcase as the projects of the Alliance. And so see it as not starting new things, but taking what you're already doing in the world and like just shining a light on it. That's our role is connective tissue. Like all we want to do is connect dots with people and like build awareness and build like, hopefully, you know, back the truck of cash in. You know, that's what we're hoping ultimately is like systemic change. The biggest problem in systemic change is the lack of resources. There's just not enough money coming in to systemic change solutions. So we want to like showcase the best ones so that like when we go out and say we're raising $5-10 billion across social change, we can talk to anyone in the world at that point once they're all stacked together and say like, okay, here's this like distributed crowdsourced network of collective intelligence around systems change. That's our hypothesis here. So it's a total fractal of what
Got
you
it.
So
Lucian, can you let us know a little bit like what the next steps would be? I mean, like now I'm understanding a little bit more. Like it's based on Food Alliance, but like what would be the next steps? Because I have to jump out in 10 minutes. What would you like to see, you know, like what are going to be like the next steps?
Yeah, so
we want to achieve this week, let's say.
So we as a group, we as Savannah House, you know, supporting the facilitation. So Brian is going to be kind of community managing and like being that touch point. If anything we can support through this week, additional people to bring in, that kind of thing, you know, supporting on that front, as well as capturing the content. Josh was doing that for sound. And then as we, like we're going to meet, we've got an hour each day at this time at 2 p.m. for those that can join. And the idea is that we get to Friday where we invite everyone together, and any one of us invites those that we think would be valuable to like be part of an hour presentation on Friday. And that's the collective sprout. And we spend half an hour with the Food Technology Guild and half an hour from the Alliance. And so we have a 1 hour meeting and we present in that time, you know, all the projects that we want to showcase. And that's the goal by the end of this week. And so we have 3.5 more hours to get to the point where we've decided what projects we want to showcase. The people that are showcasing them like are making use of the templates they already have. And we know like the next gate is basically, okay, here is when we go and say to funders like, okay, the Sound Technology Guild is doing this Crystal Bowl company and this Synesthesia company. The Sound Alliance is creating the Science of Sound Matrix and a comic book called Project Echo. And the Sound Portal Guild is creating a network of physical spaces for sound. The Food Alliance is creating the Food Solidarity Fund. Social Gastronomy Movement is already in action as a distribution model. The Food Technology Guild is bringing together geospatial technologies with like location-based, you know, nutrition stands, and like we're getting together, we're stacking all of these solutions, and we're saying like this is moving. And in our movement, in our energy that we can collectively attract, because every 2 weeks we're adding more people that can bring more energy to the collective cauldron that is Unified Planet. That's where we're going to get the kind of, I guess, attention that we need for systemic change solutions. Hopefully that's clear. And it's as best as we know right now. This is the best way we
Right.
can.
That's what I think, right? Like maybe we're gonna be wiser tomorrow. I'm just thinking, okay, so I might gonna catch up with Mackenzie about the tech track. I mean, the only thing I can do in tech is like connect maybe the part, because I'm working with communities mainly, right? Like I'm not the tech expert, so the only thing I'm thinking about is like how can we, like what we were talking about, like transparency in the supply chain, like how with technology connecting farmers with with communities in the city. Like there are all those different kind of questions for me around tech, so I can support in approaching maybe different challenge with the community perspective. And now with the social gastronomy movement, like the question would be, because it is culture, it is the collective fund, it is creating actually that structure to support different kind of organizations who are working in the food system. So is it then for us with Nikki about like we are concretizing the project better, so we can, in the end what we want is pitches so we can get funds to make our the unified dream come true in a way. But so maybe I'm a little bit, I need a little bit more what could I do now so tomorrow we're going to be a little bit more advanced in certain things.
Yeah, well, so Mackenzie and what he's doing there is going to get presented as part of the Food Technology Guild.
Yeah.
You don't need to think about how to include those projects. They're going to be presented separately. The Food Alliance is really about the like two or three projects that we want to present the solutions here as like ways to distribute capital. So I think the first thing we do now, and Greg is going to come in a moment as well, but the first thing we do now and tomorrow is we're synthesizing and saying like, okay, we can highlight all of the different projects that we want to bring into the Alliance to showcase, but let's start with a small number that are ready to receive capital that we can showcase. And so our goal this week is to like apply our ability to collectively distill into like what are those presentations so that they can be recorded, published live, published to Facebook Live. Like we invite a number of people, like everyone that's been part of the food game gets invited into the Food Collective Sprout. And it's kind of a gate on this journey. And then in 2 more weeks, then we go to the Blossom stage, and anyone that wants that's where more people could be invited to join the Alliance. And that's where, once we go to the Blossom stage, that's all about cross-pollinating. It's all about saying, okay, here's the projects, how could we add value? So that's where, Nikki, the question for you would be, what does the Food Solidarity Fund most need? Like, what can we ask for? Is like, how much are you trying to raise? What is that? Like, how can we get to that stage so that by the time we get to harvest stage, there's like, we can be really tangible saying, we're raising this much money and it will produce this many results, or this is our hypothesis for what it will produce, or we've already raised this amount of money and we're going to scale it and it's going to impact people in these ways. So that's that. Hopefully, Paula, I'm trying to kind of, it's really self-driven at this stage from you guys. It's like, it's how you want, it's like what you're already holding as like the most important solutions that we can bring forward through this process. And we're here to support you with that.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you. So Mackenzie or Adam, anything you guys would like to contribute specifically to the Alliance?
I think for me, at this point, it would make sense for the team to coordinate separately and start putting together some basic materials, some outlines and mind maps, and just so we know what we're working with here. and from, you know, a little bit of structure around who's playing with us and, you know, kind of what our assets and resources are, I get a whole lot closer to an ask. You know, again, the upside of this is none of it's conceptual. You know, these are existing companies with operations and valuations, and, you know, so with the principles of the companies that we're talking about, you know, effectively bought into a conversation around how do we collaboratively present a funding opportunity at scale. That's kind of a vision, you know, and that's really what it is. I mean, it's pitching funding on vision, right? You know, if that's what we know we're doing, then, you know, we need to come up with a moonshot style pitch that delivers on, you know, exactly that kind of tone where, you know, it's an old story, but, you know, the moonshot, the first thing they did when they got funded to go to the moon was throw a party for succeeding, having gotten to the moon. And they invited the people to the party that became the team that got everybody to the moon. So, you know, in this case, if we're going to kind of like start with the end in mind, you know, let's figure out what that vision is, what that dashboard, you know, kind of looks like. And money wise, you know, this isn't about projections. Like this is about, you know, 50 million won't do it. You know, we're not talking about a community. We're not even talking about a country. We're talking about a tool set from soil to space for the entire planet that actually becomes a really useful tool set for human space exploration. Whole nother conversation. But, you know, am I crazy? Am I missing something? And does this sound right to? So Adam, do you have any input on that? And can we bring, you know, Karn around to this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to have Karn involved. I think, I agree. I think keeping them two separate right now so that we can drill down and get to specifics is a great idea. I think as we get into, you know, specific pieces, I can pull in individuals. You know, there's a great team down here outside of Austin, Texas, that, you know, guys who know all the specifics of irrigations and pumps and this and that, and with some type of technology like that, you just pull in those specialists. You know, what is that, the data, what's the algorithm running through to determine the end result of, you need X many cubic feet of water to move through X many pipe at this many PSI. That, you know, those specifics I can pull in the specific people to help with at the appropriate time. But for now, no, I don't think that it's too crazy at all. It's the exact technology that needs to exist. And I mean, with the Regrarians platform is one they've been putting together a handbook, and it should be done by July. And that's something that is the perfect type of software to upload into a type of technological platform like that. So yeah, I think I'm just enjoying listening to this conversation, and I think I can do the most in the technology piece right now.
Adam, on that, Regrarians is really good to bring up. Regen.network is definitely the other team that I would invite to this, because they're doing some really exciting geospatial stuff. And Henry Gordon Smith in Manhattan has also put together a really cool geospatial tool for designing indoor vertical farms that has a bunch of flow-through data sets and that kind of thing. So there's some really, you know, really smart, really, you know, accomplished people going this direction, kind of, you know, in bits and pieces that we can cobble together. So, you know, if in the reach out stage, you know, we would consider those people for sure. James Hanusa has already said that he would jump in. He's already talked to Dan Mapes, so we shouldn't have any challenges there. Neil Sahota has already said that he'll jump in and bring his AI and SDG piece. You know, and Vince, we'll talk to a few other people as well. Yeah, and we'll see who else we can get to come play.
That's Mackenzie. That's exactly the energy that's driving this Alliance Emerging. People are saying, you know, consider yourself a founding player of the game. Consider yourself a founding member of the Food Alliance. And it's like, you are bringing in, you're providing the life force. We're here to support and, you know, try and make magic our side. But what I would say is that what you're describing there with Regen Network and Agrarian that's probably the space for that is to bring it into the Technology Guild, into the Food Technology Guild. And the Alliance is going to look at more like and they're
all the
all
pieces.
related, but yeah.
And just to be clear, Paula and Nicola, I'm not entirely sure where our overlap is. The food waste and food technology, sort of the separate notions here. That was what got me thinking at sort of a community scale, particularly. And the social gastronomy piece, I think, can really go into a lot of the microbiology and soil and translation of nutrients and the rest of it. So if y'all can help me understand how I can best feature, what it is you do, perhaps we can sort of, from that systemic approach, consider all of your finance and social and cultural, environmental, and build it into a bit of a mind map web. And,
Yeah, that's what I think. I think it's going to be afterwards a great connection between tech and the alliance work, community work. If we can make that happen, great. Thank you so much, guys. I really have to leave because I have another meeting in 15 minutes and I have to send out links and stuff like that. So we talk tomorrow then, right? And Mackenzie, I'm going to write you so we can have a chat separately and then see what's going to happen tomorrow, okay?
Yeah. And you can this
Thank you.
with each other. So thank you so much, Paula, for sharing.
Thank you. Yeah. Ciao.
Yeah.
And Mackenzie, on that point, there's a group of tech experts that I've been in touch with just 2 weeks ago. They are actually from the Bay Area, so I'll send the names through after. A friend connected me and they were super interested of sort of as well with that of social. And what I said that would be the most relevant right now, because there's, hunger is increasing by the minute. And so to map out where actually those needs are the most urgent and then connect them. So that comes in as well. Like there are a lot of initiatives already, but they often go to those common NGOs, etc., but they don't get to the places where real hunger is happening. And so how can we use technology to map food and the most hungry nowadays? This is something that we spoke about specifically for COVID, because they were looking at how can we use our skills to support. So that was something that I saw directly from our work on the ground as well, because a lot of people now are recuperating out of food surplus, or actually are cooking, just like Jose Andres, that's part of our network as well. But how does he get the food to those that most need it? So that's where technology comes in, right?
100%.
So I could as well, I'm going to follow up with them to see if they could bridge that somehow.
Well, the big dirty secret of the food industry is not that there is not enough food in the world. It's that there's too much food in the world, and logistics and the cold chain fails to deliver, food to people in at the right time, in the right place, according to their ability to purchase it. And frankly, I think technology is fixing that. I think we will see a complete restratification of, sort of food supply by economic access, that serves everybody, that makes food more affordable and makes food companies, make better foods for less money. But sort of in the process of it, 100%. Anything we can do with geospatial that gives the people who would be funding or subsidizing or putting things out like soup kitchens or local food donation programs or community supported agriculture, how much better could they do with real-time data? How much better could they do with facilitated local financing? Like it's just it's the tool set for this. And Adam, you mentioned, are you in Texas? Do you know Chris Higgins by chance? Okay. All right. I only mentioned because in terms of team down there, I'd love to start pulling some of those people in. But let's talk separately. And Lucian, what else do you? I know we only got a few minutes left here, man. What else do you want to cover?
No, I think this is brilliant. What you're speaking to here, Mackenzie, is the intersectionality of alliance and guilds, and that's where we'll see this alliance being essentially like a trusted council for distributing of funding, resources, awareness, communications. We know if you think about systemic change, we put way more money into bricks than we do mortar. So we do way more money into end solutions than actually connecting the dots between them. And so that's what this is all about. We're the synapse, we're the connective tissue, the mitochondria network, with you know, the connective tissue here, the fascia of this. And so we're seeing that, and I think what you described there from a food distribution, like Regen Network, all of those pieces will become like things that the Alliance can profile. So thank you for that. Yeah, we've got 10 more minutes if we want. We can always end early. Like there's no, you know, we're in a race from 10:30 in the morning until 6 p.m. with over 60 people playing the game today. So not.
And Greg just joined as well.
Hey, Greg.
Hi. I was playing the California governance game today.
Greg,
I have only, sorry, I've just been busy today, and
yeah,
thank you.
Happy you're here, and this would be a good time to loop in to Alliance work. What we've synthesized is social gastronomy movement, as well as what Nikki and Paula have been leading with this Solidarity Fund, like awesome projects to profile in the Food Alliance. But what, Greg, I think you're holding here for the Food Alliance, all of the different pieces around the California Capital Markets Task Force. That is like an awesome thing to profile here as like local solutions that are already like, you know.
So let's talk about it. Let me just spend maybe 2 minutes. And Mackenzie and I spent a lot of time together, and you'd both know that I will go on if I'm not reminded to keep it. So I'll do it in 2 minutes. So really great to see all of us here. As a way of explaining and sharing what you know, what the California Capital Markets Task Force is all about, it's about recognizing that we need a 21st century civilization in every bioregion on the planet. And the living laboratory, you might say, of California is the domain where I've focused, but not limited to California, because I and many of us have relationships with similar communities across the planet trying to achieve the same things where they reside, in the similar fashion that the Regenerative Community Network has already got like 50 to 100 nodes with a lot of friends thinking and saying the very same things that we are. And having been in many of those discussions for many years, that design of the mortar, how do you actually design effective mortar? Because we're building bricks for our mortar to connect where we are, but we don't realize that someone may already be designing mortar and bricks elsewhere, but our design may help them where they are. But how do we weave that cooperative structure? And one of the things that what I was just on is our steering committee call for our annual California Economic Summit, which the governor is our honorary chair, and he's been involved from beginning, and 16 regional conversations talking about all the issues, including food systems, infrastructure, housing, inclusive economic development, and the like. So my focus isn't on food or capital or California, but a system of how do we create a 21st century civilization that embodies this. And what's the big game? Because and I will, if I can take 30 seconds more, the big game is like a challenge of a friend of mine who I've talked to for years. And he just finished an enormous project for, and I texted you about this, Lucian, for the president of South Africa, you know, like an X Prize type of thing. And I'm like, well, come and play in California, but X Prize is here. But how does your group and X Prize work together? Because they're so similar, but there's enough differentiation to justify cooperative behavior, but they don't know how to design that glue. And I want us to make sure we're not just trying to become another version of that in the way that we've all talked, but it's a very challenging thing when each of us need to focus on our niches and sub niches. And this is the very discussion that we had on our California Economic Summit discussion today, with every leader in our group in every domain of activity in every region of the state. So it's the nut that we have to crack, and we have to celebrate the initiatives like we're having, but at the same time, not redundantly repeat the same conversations we've all been in the past, and bring others into the discussion that are doing the same thing. So I'll leave it at that. And Mackenzie and I just spent quite a few hours and over the last couple of years talking about how to reconcile that through making economic summits that embody this in every state in the union. But that's a hole that Mackenzie can bring us down.
Yeah.
So that's my update.
This is perfect, Greg. Like as per usual, perfect synthesis of a contribution there. And yeah, you know, XPRIZE, I've been in quite a few conversations with them. Anusha, who's the CEO, I've been advising on the forthcoming community charter prize, it's called, for the XPRIZE. And so we see our roles as like very different. Like we're very complementary to XPRIZE, the Up Game is, because the Up Game's all around like bringing forth the community intelligence, and that's one of the strategies the XPRIZE is. But we're going about it differently. We're about bringing solutions from communities and highlighting them, and almost like as an accelerator model more than a prize model. But super complementary. And what we would see is XPRIZE would be a great partner for us to bring people, communities, projects that are being profiled as XPRIZE into the game. What I
want to do, and I was thinking about this along these lines, Lucian, in our exchanges, and we haven't had much time to talk about this, so I'm kind of fresh with it, is what I just is the game in California going on in every community with mayors and county boards of supervisors addressing everything we're talking about and needing input from everything we're talking about. So I'm thinking, how do we make our game so that we just drop into their game and contribute where they have gaps rather than getting them to join this game? In other words, how do we become an invisible nutrient upgrade for the existing system so that the people that might feel that we're competing with them are really saying, no, thank you for bringing all your goods, as if we're populating all of their roundtables and all of their efforts, rather than trying to get them to come to our roundtables and efforts, because that's a challenge I've had. I've got so many of these similar conversations going on myself. I can't just join yet another one of the redundant things that I'm already doing, but I want to weave everybody together in the spirit we're talking about. That's the real game that I want us to play.
Well, Greg, and that's, I think, an invitation for this is the alliance. Is like how can we be effective weavers to weave where the biggest gaps are, to like be kind of precision, you know, like the Navy SEALs of systems change, to go in and with precision go and point to those community solutions where we know that pouring in capital there is going to have an outsized, like a quantum leap change around systems. Like that's like one of the most effective points. And so that's our goal, is to go and find like where are those existing initiatives of collective intelligence forming, shine a light on them so that like the game is really there to support a whole ecosystem. The game itself isn't about producing community solutions, it's about showcasing, accelerating, and like funding and scaling these efforts. So thank you for bringing that in.
Forgive me, Lucian. I'm sorry. I need to leave. I've got another call in 2 minutes. I got to sort some things. But I wanted to pass around my phone number, and please, Nicola and Adam, could you reach out so we can talk separately? If we could, please, this evening, just share a screen and put a little Google Drive folder together and knock out an outline and start moving into some simple timelines and mind maps. It'll give us all something to look at. And some deliverables, and we'll have better conversations as the weeks progress. And if I understand, Lucian, this week it's basically 2 hours a day, and then what about next week?
Yeah, so next week is off. It's 1 hour a day. It's 1 hour for the Food Technology Guild and 1 hour for the Food Alliance. You're very welcome to be part of both. And again, what I mentioned earlier about the stars, you'll be like earning stars for your participation, and the ability to convert those stars into dollars depends on these projects that we bring forward raising money. So it is like our intention is that your participation is like rewarded as you go through, but you're participating in this experiment to get that. And this week we meet at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then we're going to do the presentation at 1 p.m. on Friday, the collective sprout. So those calendar invites are all distributed. Come what you can. Brian has been taking fierce and furious notes here, and we'll share that round so that we can use that as a framework to build on what's being said and the synthesis that's coming here. And any coordination support you need, Brian is facilitating this food section through the week.
Brian and Joshua, thank y'all. Lucien, thank you very much. Nicola, Adam, have a wonderful day. I need to run. Take care, y'all.
Thank you. And Lucien, well, I'll share. Adam Mackenzie just dropped out, but I'll share already what we have on the collective fund, because we've done a lot of pre-work now, so we can use that as a basis as well. So when we do have a shared drive, I can upload it. Or
yeah, that's amazing. We'll get that.
It's gone for a few stages already.
We'll get it out today, and we'll feel free to put that presentation in there, and I'm sure that presentation will form part of what we so. And with
Awesome.
that, meet Shane, who is the Sherpa of the Sound Technology Guild that we moved.
Everybody.
Shane, this is Greg Went, who you may know actually. You could well know each other. You definitely will know each other. Greg's in Santa Monica. Adam Russell, and then we've got Nicky down in Brazil. Shane is the amazing entrepreneur, sound practitioner leading the Sound Technology Guild. So which we're going to flip over to now. But so Nicky, thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow, and we'll follow up by email today. And Greg, and if anyone wants to listen to the conversation on sound technology, you're super welcome.
Thank you. And as always, I'll pop in when I can. And I love you guys. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah. Thank you. Keep it up. You're amazing.
We are together. And Lucien, let's make sure to follow up on what I said. And Nicky, hi, I love you.
Hi. We'll manage eventually as well. And I've read all your documents, so I was there in my mind.
Love it. Bye. Thank you.
Bye,
Love
everyone. Lucien, quick, I don't know if Q reached out, but it'd be so awesome to have SGM represented in the community piece, because that's sort of like.
He was a total legend today. I managed to.
Yay! I'm so happy it worked out.
He made an epic contribution today. His contribution already flowed into one of the pillars that I think we're going to have.
Awesome.
So he made a great point about what defines community as trust. He's just a great addition to that, and I think it's a really good bridge between the food and community as well. So.
Perfect. No, that's why I told him I won't manage, because I really wanted to be there, but it's just too much. And so he said, no, I'll be there. I'll be so happy to participate. So cross-pollination just happening through the networks. It's perfect. Just wanted to make sure that it worked, but he could reach you.
So many games you can play. So thank you, Nicky, and
thank you.
Shane.
Have a great session. Nice meeting you, Shane.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.